And welcome back to Zombie Squad Cast. In this episode, I got Charlie Anderson. Charlie and I go way back, maybe 15 years plus or minus. A bunch of independent productions, the short film Incubator, the TV pilot C-47,
bunch of Under Armour stuff.
Bunch of Under Armour stuff. Freaking was it Feet of Disaster, Feet of Destiny?
Whew, that movie.
That we all, yeah. A couple other shorts. Kevin Sockwell's short. I can't remember what that was called. We were shooting with the teenagers in that one house for like a weekend. Like a bunch.
Oh yeah. I forget what that's called. It's like senior year or something like that. Or
that's what it was. Senior year. Yeah. A bunch of independent stuff. Very. Definitely a lot of learning lessons as far as I go when it comes to being an AD. So it definitely callous to me. So Charlie Anderson, red camera, filmmaker, cinematographer, gamer extraordinaire. Introduce yourself, what you do, who you are, what you've been up to.
Well, you already gave me quite the introduction. My name's Charlie Anderson. I have been in the New York area since 2010. So I've been up here about 10 years now in the New York metropolitan area. I moved out of New York about 3.5 years ago to Connecticut because my wife's from Connecticut. So we decided to move up here to have a family, no kids yet or anything like that, but we're in the right area for it, and it's also way expensive in Brooklyn, so we decided to move out and get bigger bang for a buck. I was a DIT for 12 years, which is a digital imaging technician. I've worked on shows like Z, The Beginning of Everything for Amazon. I've worked on HBO's Vinyl. Worked on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel for three seasons. A bunch of Netflix shows, all that sort of stuff. I stopped DITing to be a camera operator and cinematographer on the show FBI, which is on CBS. And that was unfortunately ended 6 weeks early due to the COVID-19 pandemic that's now plagued us. So now I'm enjoying what we call fun employment. So it's great.
Fun employment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fun employment.
Yeah.
So did they close out the show? Did they wrap it up, or did it just have like this like nothing kind of finale?
So it was they wrapped it. So normally it was a 23 episode season. We were in the middle of filming episode 20. Like I think we were like day 5 of 8.
Yeah.
And then at wrap, which was like a 14-hour day, they said that all right, that's our season. Thank you guys very much. That's it. So I'm like, oh my God. Okay, well that's crazy.
No shit.
So they ended at 19 episodes was the last one. So which was kind of unfortunate because I actually they had one more day of shooting. They had a bunch of pickups to do in one. It was on a Friday. I think it was like March 13th or something like that. And I was doing like second unit DP work that day, and the DP was like, hey, since they called it early for the next day, like you're gonna get paid on Friday no matter what. Do you want to come in or do you want to like take the day you're gonna get paid? I was like, hey, I got stuff to do for my house because I also just bought a house, so this is a great time to buy a house. And I was like, hey, I got some stuff I need to do for the house. Can I just take the day and I'll see you on Monday? And she's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And then that's I got a text like at lunchtime on Friday saying that like that day is the last day of the season. So I was like, well, didn't really get to say goodbye to anybody, but it's okay. So it is what it is. But yeah, they pulled the plug mid episode, episode 20. It's crazy.
Well, look, congratulations on a great gig. That sounds like a dope gig to be on. And I mean, I guess what are they just going to close out the season with a cliffhanger and then?
Well, it's a Dick Wolf show. I don't know if they do cliffhangers on that show. So.
Oh, that's right. It is. Okay. Yeah.
But even so.
Yeah, no shit. So, okay. And you bought a house. I just recently bought a house with the wife, and yeah. So it's I know where you're coming from. Where it's like, hey, I got to do a bunch of shit with this house, especially if you had bought it closer to the pandemic.
Yeah, I think we closed the end of February. So,
right.
So it's like literally like bought the house 2 weeks later out of a job. So on one hand, I'm happy because we got a mortgage because of all of it. We got actually a decent rate for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously with the freelance industry, I'm used to having, 3 to 4 months off of a year. And we had already started to save money for the house and also for that 3 to 6 months, 3 to 6 months off anyway, because we were getting towards the end of our season. So we shut down 6 weeks early. So like I had already saved 6 months of pay
Mm-hmm.
in preparation of not taking any work for 6 months, essentially, once between seasons and whatnot. So luckily I was in that position where I had that already going for me, but I know a few people in the industry who weren't so lucky and live paycheck to paycheck. So it's crazy to see what they're up to. So
yeah. No, I mean, I'm sort of one of them. I mean, I have money in savings, but
yeah.
Yeah, I know a couple of the colleagues that were like paycheck to paycheck, and
that's tough.
Yeah, it's rough, and especially with something like this, like out of the blue. And luckily, the government is kind of stepping up, pulling up their bootstrings and all that stuff, and looking out for everybody. But something like this is really unpredictable.
Yeah, who would have thought that we'd all be shut down for like 6 months because of pandemic?
Yeah, like and I think I'm, if I'm not mistaken, I know you're like a zombie film kind of semi-zombie horror film buff. I know I am, and it's just like, holy shit, everything we've been watching for the last 25 years sort of is coming true. I mean, this could be the first year. I know all those movies kind of give you a flashback of the first 5 years, the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So this is only the first 2-3 months.
Yeah, well, it just goes to show that the parts of those movies where we thought was unrealistic, of people not believing that an apocalypse is happening, has been proven to be true in the story points. Like people are going out and disobeying the government orders and whatever, going out. It's like, oh, you're like, stay at home. I'm gonna go to the farmer's market. I'm gonna go to the park, and then they get attacked by a zombie. Like, oh, it's
right,
like,
exactly.
Like that would never happen, and then we're seeing it firsthand that would actually.
And people are still, and in our case, people are still getting the coronavirus. People are going out and protest. People are going out and protesting against the restrictions, and they're getting the fucking virus.
Yeah,
it's wild. Yeah, exactly. So
it's just, I just find it funny that people who are like the most like prepared for like an end of the world disaster are the ones that are out in force, being like, I need a haircut. I'm like, have you learned to cut your own hair? But I thought, what happened to the doomsday preppers? Where are they?
Yeah, the wife hates the buzz cut, but I told her, I said, you might have to get used to it.
Get used to it, yeah.
You might have to get used to it for a little while, yeah. But yeah, man. So I guess that's how you were impacted professionally. How would you say you've been impacted personally? Like you said, you and the wife got a house and you moved. So what's?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we just we bought a house. We bought a house, and we also were in the process of renting out our condo. So we went from a condo to a single family home, and so we weren't planning on selling it, but luckily we had all the mortgages deferred and whatnot for 3 months. So that was a big help with everything, because like trying to pay for this house and that house was like, it's a lot of money, man. You're paying for 2 mortgages out when you're not making an income.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were scrambling to get the place ready to rent before everything got shut down. And so we didn't, not you, Siri, come on. But we just found renters for that. So that was like, just, I mean, it's still not until next month, but still it's a big weight off our shoulders. So at least, like once everything kind of calms down in maybe June, July, August, so at least we have one house taken care of. We don't have to really worry about it too much. But it's been besides that, it's just like we're lucky in the sense that we have a new house to unpack and do stuff around the house, little projects here and there.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. So, but we're gonna say we're about like 90% unpacked, but we're
Take
getting close. Time. Yeah, well, it's just like we are taking our time, but it's still at the same time like I'm going stir crazy because I'm getting close to not being able to do anything, and now I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna sit and play video games, but I have so many other things I got to do. So it's like,
yeah, no, I understand it. Like I said, me and the wife, we bought a house. I think we settled September. We moved in, throughout October, November. So I was doing a bunch of little small projects.
Yeah.
And we bought because she was pregnant. And so,
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So February 29th, we brought the kid home. No, February 29th, he was born. March 4th or 5th, we brought the kid home. And then it was boom, quarantine. So we've had hands-on nonstop 24/7.
I can't even imagine what it's like to have a newborn in all of this, man. Well, I guess it kind of works out the same, like, right? Because you would be home normally, I guess, but now you're just like,
well, we're not at each other's throats all the time. I mean, we still bicker, I'm sure, just as all couples do. We're still bicker, we still get on each other's nerves, but 95% of it is hands-on with him.
Yeah.
He's starting to giggle now. He's starting to react to stimulus, like the play mats, or like he laughed at me because I laughed at my wife saying something.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone's like, oh, when am I going to, I hope I don't miss the first word. I hope I don't miss the first walk. But the situation we're in, we're catching every tiny little thing. Like seeing how a smile evolves into a giggle, evolves into a laugh, and it's seeing all the micro evolution.
Yeah, those little moments in between too.
Not only the little moments, like the micro moments.
Yeah,
like we can take notes on when a smile turned into a giggle, turned into a laugh. It's like that's every little thing that we're seeing. So yeah, it's like luckily you have the house and you have these things to occupy you, keep your mind off of things, and stay and stay occupied and stay productive. And like myself, and maybe, I don't know, do you have any passion projects? Do you have any like little side things going on, like a music video for a local band or something you were doing?
It's funny you say that, because yes, I do have that going on too.
Yeah.
I actually just I was supposed to have a meeting today about it, but that got pushed to tomorrow. So I've been doing, as you know, like back in Baltimore, I used to do music videos nonstop. So we kind of I stopped doing quantity over quality, and I started doing quality over quantity essentially. And now I've been doing just like 1 or 2 music videos a year, but like just like stepping it up, making it really big and boisterous, or what, doing the best that I can given the budgets that we have. But but also at the time, like I was doing the in between jobs, so like I was trying to plan them out. So in between TV shows or movies that I was working on, because I do essentially work for 6 months at a time. So I'd take a 6-month job, have a month off, try to plan like 1 or 2 shoots in the middle of that, and then get on another show, blah blah blah, or try to shoot on the weekends if I was like really crazy. But yeah, so I have another music video that I'm working on right now. And I have a podcast that I also do as well, which is a gaming podcast where we talk about like video games, and we have one mobile game that we play. It's called Marvel Strike Force. We love to hate on it, essentially, is what it comes down to. But so I've been doing that. We normally would do that podcast bi-weeklies. So it's like, every other week and whatnot. So, because when I was working, doing things weekly on a basis when you work 70 hours a week, it's just exhausting. So it's like, and I also do all the editing. I do all the marketing for it. I do all that stuff. So I haven't done that. So with the quarantine, we've now stepped it up to weekly. So now we're getting more downloads, but now we have to make more content. So, as I'm sure with that, it's a hard struggle, and I hate every moment of it, because I hate to love it, or I love to hate it is what I'm trying to say. Because it's nice because I'll get up in the morning, I'll get my coffee. Before I used to wake up at like 6:30, 7 o'clock when this first started. I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'll be super productive. Like I'll come downstairs, I'll start working on the podcast or some other things, or do some Twitch streaming or something. And I look over, I was like, oh, cool. It's like, 11 o'clock. I have the whole day ahead of me. Now I wake up at like 9:30 in the morning. I get my coffee, I go downstairs, I look at the clock, and next thing I know, it's 5:30. I'm like, I didn't do anything. What happened to the day? It's like, oh, I guess I'll go drink a beer now. Time to go.
It's a completely different structure, and eventually, we'll jump into what we consider the new normal and all that. But like right now, it's a completely different life structure, to where I think once a week, if that, I go out and run errands.
Yeah, I think that's what we're at too.
And, you know, when the wife was recovering, I would take her car once, I would take my car, and then her car, because we got to keep the cars running a little bit. You know, the cars can't just sit there for months on end because they might not work. So, you know, you got to keep, you know, the alternators running and all the gears running and all that bullshit. So switch off the cars. And it's like, I got to, now there's shit like that I got to think of instead of, oh, just get up, go to my next gig. The car, you know, fill up with gas. I haven't gone to the gas station in weeks.
Yeah.
But I always find myself double checking gas. Okay. I mean, it's just this totally new standard where, you know, with the kid, you know, me and her, we have different sleep schedules that kind of coincide with each other, so that I can take over at one point, she could take a nap, and then she's up, and then I can take a nap, and I can work on a podcast, or I can edit, you know, some of these side projects that I have that I finally knocked out like half of the shit that I was trying to edit and you know, schedule on YouTube and get out there. So I finally got half of that done, and I still have a short and I still have a documentary, you know, to cut up. But, you know, I found if there's not going to be a full-time job, there's not going to be, you know, 5 gigs a week, you know, 5 days a week for me to go to, you know, start this podcast. Me and some colleagues are trying to do something like this over the course of a few years. Yeah. And, you know, we kind of got some traction, and then we didn't. And I think now is the most opportune time, like you said, for gaming this. And it's funny you mentioned Marvel Strike Force, because I play Marvel's Contest of Champions.
Yeah, so one of our other guys plays that too.
Yeah,
it's funny.
And I was considering taking on a second game like Strike Force, and I never did.
Don't do it.
Don't? Okay.
don't do it. I mean, I can't. Everyone keeps asking me because they see me streaming on Facebook and they see me all this stuff, and I get people messaging me all the time like, "Hey, I like Marvel. Do you recommend?" And it's like, I can't recommend that game just because the catch-up mechanics. I mean, I've been playing the game for 2 years, and like I'm say in the upper echelon of the game in terms of like competitiveness and whatnot, but like I've made new accounts just to see what it's like, because people have asked me like, what do I do if I'm a new player? I can't recommend the game at all. But one game that I would recommend if you're a fan of like MMOs or anything like that would be Black Desert Mobile, which is, I've done that game, or I've been playing that game since it launched in December. And that's I've been playing 100% free to play, haven't put a single cent into it, because, you know, all these mobile games, they have like loot boxes and like, it's like, you want an extra 30 power cores, then, you know, here's, you know, an offer for $5, but like, where you can buy like, you know, 100 power cores for $100. So anyway, it's just such predatory stuff. But anyway, Black Desert Mobile is just a fun game. It looks great on iOS or Android, or, I mean, I do a lot of emulators on my computer and whatnot, but it's fun, man. I play that game, you know, every day. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's cool. Just something just to like continuously, you know, check in on, you know, do something new.
Whatever. Yeah, I've been playing Marvel Cock since fucking since I was deployed. So anywhere between 2014 and 2015, I've been playing Marvel Contest when it first launched. And I think I was a couple months late, because if I had started it within the week of launch, I would have like this higher tier, and I would be making, you know, like an extra 33% of the rewards or whatever. Yeah, I think I was like, or whatever. Yeah. There it is. Yeah. And I think I was like a week and a half shy of that, because I have like, I think the second highest kind of tier ranking within the game, because I've been playing it since essentially the beginning, minus that one fucking week. But
yeah, I can't do fighting games whatsoever. So like, I've tried playing Contest of Champions, man. I've tried the Injustice 2. I can't get into it, man. I could
not get into Injustice because the fighting, the play sucked. The controls sucked. And the controls for this were good. But what's even worse is I don't know how it is for brand new players within the last couple of years, but I remember a couple of years ago, Doctor Strange became a character. And if you get Doctor Strange, then you're able to do this mind over matter, and you don't even have to play. You hit a button and it auto plays for you, auto fights. And so like, I'm just building my stats and I'm building my characters, and I'm not even looking at it. I might just hit continue, or I might hit next, and then it does it all for itself because you got Doctor Strange. But
Yeah. I'm at the point now where I'm trying to automate as much as I can within the TOS. So I'm like,
Yep.
so, but
Yeah, man.
I know with Contest of Champions, like you can't play on a desktop emulator because they'll ban you immediately if you like enter the arena or something like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, the fucking thing doesn't even work on my iPad, but I got a really old, shitty iPad. But I've got an iPad that's so old it won't do software updates anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
So so Marvel Cock won't play on that. But yeah, man,
there's a new one coming out called Future Revolution. I don't know if you follow that. It's by Netmarble. It's the guys who do Future Fight. So they're coming out with a new one that's kind of like a RPG MMO type game for Marvel. They haven't really added a release date yet for it, but it's coming out soon. I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm going to be doing some content for that.
So this pretty much answers my question, but I'll just ask it. So for you, is it Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Yeah, okay. So you're a big fan. Are you a big fan of like the MCU and all that?
I like the MCU. I wasn't a big Marvel fan at all. Like, I mean, I knew Spider-Man. I knew, I knew the Fantastic Four. I knew of them, but like I never read any comics.
Mm-hmm.
I had a roommate in college. You remember Chris Weisrick?
Oh yeah.
He was my roommate in up in New York, and so he had tons and tons and tons of comics and whatnot. And so I was like, yeah, what all do you like? And like he got me into the Walking Dead comic, and I still read that, although it's been probably a good 6 months since I've read it. Probably should actually read up on it. But then I started to play. I forget what I was doing. So I think anyway, long story short, I got into it because of like friends kept reading comics. They kept telling me to get into some other things, and then the MCU came out, and so it kind of re-piqued my interest in comics.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there's like a Marvel Unlimited plan that came out for like a super discount. It was like 75% off for like $30 a year, and so I bought that. And I read, I haven't read any comics in a while, but like I'm grandfathered into this like essentially $5 a month for life for Marvel Unlimited. So like, why wouldn't I just hold on to it?
Absolutely.
Or it's not even that. It's like it's way less than that. But anyway,
yeah,
it's like $2 a month or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and I've got a bunch of comics that I bought. Some digital. Well, back in the day, I used to collect comics, and I was like the kind of kid that would see a cover. Like I would have like a set of 6 or 7 Spider-Man comics based on, I think it was like a special series. Like a Venom Spider-Man 6-issue thing. And then I kind of fell off of it, and I went and got like a Batman thing because it was like these odd time. I grew up in this odd time where everybody was coming out with these sagas, like a 10-issue saga. And so, because I was buying comics from like between 91 and 93, and then I just stopped. But then I started getting into like the X-Men animated show on Fox, the Batman animated series. Those were the things I kind of more got into because it was just easier to watch than read, I guess. But I was always into like Superman and Batman was always my thing. So DC, when I was really young, was always my thing. And then kind of X-Men was really dope, and Spider-Man was always kind of cool until the X-Men movies came out, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans came out, and that's when it was a total flip. It was fucking, and then even Blade. It was just Marvel. I didn't know Blade was Marvel thing until I think the opening of Blade 2 that had that Marvel page animation thing. I was, holy shit, that's right. He is a fucking comic book character. But yeah, like I kind of just moved over. I mean, Batman's always gonna be like top tier. Batman and Joker. I always go back to those movies. Like, obviously Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is amazing, and the Dark Knight series is better than most of the MCU movies standalone. But the MCU is just like this grand, epic, almost Star Wars-esque, galaxy of a universe.
Yeah, they do a really good job of like crossing their T's and dotting their I's in terms of like, how things connect, what people are doing, and like this thing is in reference to this, and that has like a cool Easter egg. If like the Eternals comic, like if you look here, you'll notice like that little thing with Stan Lee and like the Endgame 2 or whatever. It was just wild to see these little things that like, unless you really pay attention, like you really, or a fan of the comics one, you wouldn't really understand what it is. But but the thing is too, like DC has been trying to get to the level of MCU since Iron Man 3 essentially came out. So they realized that that's what people want, and like they've been trying to do that with Justice League and Aquaman. So they're kind of there, but they also have the thing that makes the Marvel movies, I think, great is the Marvel is their own entity. Like the DC universe doesn't have like Sony to overarching and be like producers elsewhere be like, well, I think Venom should do this on this side instead, or whoever, because Venom's also on Sony. So, but like Marvel has their own people whom they answer to, and they stick to their guidelines and how they want their characters to appear. So it's just wild to see other companies try to do that, but with restrictions, and it just goes to show that it doesn't really work if you don't stick true to the original medium. So at least that's what I find.
Yeah, Marvel Studios has Kevin Feige, who is DC's under Warner Brothers, and I can only assume that there's way too many cooks in the kitchen. Whereas Kevin Feige is the ultimate, he's like the restaurant owner, and he said this is the whole menu for the next 20 years. This is how they tie in. Screenwriter, write this, but you need to keep these 5 points in this script to make it to this, and then this, you screenwriter, for this. As long as you have these 5 points, and of course they're going to script doctor, a couple of screenwriters per script, but you have Kevin Feige overseeing everything. Whereas with Warner Brothers, you probably have a whole chair, and they're like, oh man, we want more green in this. Green what? Just the color green is hot right now. That's what's trending, or some shit like that. And it's too long, it's too violent, and we want to sell toys. And Kevin Feige is like, we're gonna fucking sell toys regardless, but we're gonna make a good movie. And maybe Kevin Feige right now is probably a little extra battling with Disney, but I fucking doubt it. I highly doubt it, because it's still, Disney's been involved for 5 or 10 years now. And still it's been the Kevin Feige Marvel Studios. It hasn't been the Disney Marvel Studios.
Yeah, which is wild. It just goes to show that, like, having somebody with the vision that he has for the series, essentially, like, I mean, they're like, what, Endgame was the end of 10 years of Marvel Studios movies, right? It's like, can you imagine like having not only like the mindset to have that, or just the pressure of like, hey, this is the culmination of 10 years worth of movies. People have grown up on this. Like, there's kids who were like, 8 or 9, and then now are like, adults now growing up on Marvel films. It's wild.
Yep. From, age 10 to age 20, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was age 29 to 39. I mean, still, that's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a huge fandom from Iron Man, to Iron Man 2, to Avengers and Captain America and Thor, all the way up, like you said, and a couple other side films too. And then you see everybody culminate, and he, to the best of my assumption, he had all that in mind.
Yeah.
All the way up to like, someone's going to die. 1 or 2 big names are going away permanently. But I think they did a pretty good job pulling that off in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, to where they encapsulated a 60-year, 50 years, maybe not,
something like that,
40-year saga. And I think they did a relatively good job. I mean, completely different studio and batch of filmmakers with the original trilogy, prequel trilogy, and then sequel trilogy. But they kind of pulled off the same thing. And I think Disney is smart enough to say, we're going to make money regardless if we step in and muddle things up, or if we just sit back, relax, and let the artists take over. We're still going to make money.
Yeah.
Whereas Warner Brothers is just too much of a bunch of muddlers, and they just step in like, no, cut out 30 minutes. And David Ayer's like, fucking why? It's going to be a long, just Suicide Squad's going to be freaking long, but it's going to be way freaking better. And even, the original cut of Suicide Squad, clearly nobody understood the whole mythology and the whole ideology behind what the Suicide Squad is.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to like, that's a whole bunch of Marvel stuff and DC stuff. I like it. I don't think I've ever talked that much about it on here yet, so that's cool. But
So
yeah, man.
no, I was not a Marvel fan really up until the MCU. So that's what it comes down to. Bringing it all the way back around. Yeah.
And another funny joke is, so I have a bunch of people that just are like, X-Men this, you can't do this. This blankety blank happened in the comics. And I'm like, which comics? They reboot Origins
all the time.
In the comics, Spider-Man has had different wives. You know what I'm saying? Spider-Man has, throughout the 80 years, 90 years Spider-Man's been around, he's graduated high school maybe 5 or 6 times, married somebody else. So when somebody died at the end of a Spider-Man movie, they're like, that's what happened in the comics. Like, that's what has happened once or twice in the comics. But my joke is that the MCU is the ultimate Marvel timeline.
Mm-hmm.
The comics, like the actual written comics, I mean, of course you have to pay respect to that.
Yeah, but there's the different multiverses and all that sort of stuff too within the Marvel universe and all
right.
that sort of stuff, which is kind of like it's that I think, like, having gone back and try to reread some of these things after things have happened, it's just like that to me. Like, I don't know how somebody wrapped their head around that, but that's also ingenious because they could reboot, do different versions, and keep the lines running for an infinite amount of times because there's infinite universes that they could be in. So, did you watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse?
Yeah.
I thought that was phenomenal.
Yeah, and I thought they really found like a cool, funny way of just like poking at all the different Spider-Men that we have seen and then maybe haven't seen. Like, was it Spider Pork, Spider Pig?
Yeah.
Spider
John
Ham.
Mulaney. Yeah.
Spider Ham. That's what it is. Spider Ham. Yeah, I mean, it was Nick Cage is Spider Noir.
Yeah, I thought it was just so good, man.
Yeah, and it was a shame they couldn't get Tobey Maguire to do the voice of his version. But I think the Spider-Man that was helping Miles Morales was supposed to be the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was either that one or the one that had died. So there was another Spider-Man in another universe that died. I think that was either that was the Tobey Maguire one or the Andrew McCarthy one.
Gotcha.
And then the one that helped Miles was a Tobey Maguire or Andrew McCarthy. I don't know. It's one of those, but that is like basically what was going on. But yeah, that movie was really freaking cool. And it turned out to be like Dr. Octavia instead of Doc Ock. I mean, it was just, it was just
yeah,
dope.
it was a cool little twists on things too. I thought it was really good. It's just like, and that's all. Let's choose those directors, Chris Lord and I forget the other guy's name, who did like all the Lego movies, the original Lego movies. So it's the same guys who did all those. So they just nailed it with the Lego movies. Just continued that style over onto like this animated, their humor and whatnot. So they're great. I've actually worked on one of their films, and they're great people. So
which film's that?
22 Jump Street.
Okay, very cool. Yeah.
It was a long time ago. That was like almost 8 years ago at this point.
Well, yeah, man. I'm glad. Some of the filmmakers from Maryland are actually making it.
Trying to. It's man. It's some days I love it, and some days I hate it. I'd say most days I hate it, but
you can't hate it. You can't hate it, man. Success is success, though. If you're doing what you love, then I mean,
well, when you've fallen asleep at the wheel and have woken up like almost dead multiple times, and your union, who's supposed to protect you, doesn't do anything about it, you start to get resentful real quick.
Okay, touche.
Yeah,
I'm not.
I mean, that's really all it comes down to. Like, I love the craft of filmmaking. I don't know what else I would do, and like I still love it. I just meant that like there are definitely times like when you've worked 90 hours in a week and you haven't been home.
Yeah.
You have just enough time to go home, drink a beer and go to bed and wake up, 4 hours later to go back to work. You do that for 6 months, you kind of start to get resentful. So
sure.
But that's a whole another conversation for a whole another time. So,
okay. Maybe we'll come back to that in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
We'll see where we're at on this quarantine. But yeah, man. And we talked quite a bit about the Marvel stuff. So aside from Marvel or DC products or anything like that, what's a film or a series or a bunch of films, a series of films, or a book or a series of books you've read over this course you've been binge watching, or just stand out in your mind during this quarantine that have just helped take your mind off of things, get you through it? Escapism.
I'm trying to go back and watch series that I've never seen before. So I've never seen Mad Men. I've started that.
Okay.
I'm about 8 episodes into season 1. I've surprisingly have never seen The Sopranos, so that's up next after Mad Men. And then there's also, we're trying to finish Ozarks right now. I think we're halfway through season 2. So
yeah, I got to watch season 3 of Ozark. Mad Men, I don't think I ever finished. Like the whole hippie era of the show. I don't even remember seeing it. But
I don't know anything about it.
How far are you into it, Mad Men?
8 episodes into the first season.
Oh shit! Well, I didn't spoil much.
Yeah, well, I know they go back through different decades and whatnot. Yeah, but it's just interesting. I know one of the cinematographers on that show, who actually was with who I had worked with on Maisel, and I didn't realize that he had shot it until he was starting to talk about Mad Men for certain lighting styles that he was like kind of borrowing from. I was like, oh shit, I didn't realize that David had also worked on that. So I was like, all right, I just made a list of things I wanted to start with, and that was the top of my list. So, but like I said, like as much as I've been wanting to do more like side projects and catch up on things, I find myself like kind of just getting through the day just by like catching up on things I've neglected over the years. It's like, I'm finally working on websites I've been meaning to do. I've been podcasting more. I've been trying to catch up on games or connect with other people. Like, but I'm also like trying to work with a community of DITs to help them with like, what we could do for, streaming content while we're, still in quarantine and figuring out remote management of media. So I'm doing a bunch of stuff. So it's like the day goes by real quick when you have a lot of things to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm still surprised that like, it's like, I shouldn't be doing anything. I should just be sitting around watching TV or just like hanging out and just like relaxing. But I don't know. I'm just such a busy bee that I'm just like, I can't just sit idly by and let the day go by. I have to do something.
Right. Because and I agree, because in my quarantine, I'm thinking, okay, I have a lot of these projects. Let me take the time now. I'm not getting paid. I'm not fucking doing anything anyway, except for the wife and the kid. That's number one. But knock all these other things out so that there's something that I have in the can when the doors open, and maybe I could throw something. If I know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, I can pitch something. I can pitch something, a film or a series, maybe some like small indie online series for some small streaming network. Like, hey, does this interest you? This is something I did. It's a YouTube thing right now. This is a show I'm doing. This is a podcast. I mean, these are different things that could turn into bigger things once the floodgates open, once the gates open, and that sort of thing. So I agree. It's to be complacent and to be lazy now. It's understandable and it's welcome, because what else is there to do? But there's different strokes for different folks. And I think for us, for you and I, it's like, if this is a perfect opportunity to write or to outline, to put a proposition, to put a pitch together, at least to like just start writing outlines on anything. You want to do it. You want to build a platform for online DITs. I mean, at least write up or draw a blueprint for it. Now's the time to do that. I mean, maybe there's only so much you can do cooped up in the basement to actually make that happen. I mean, podcasting, obviously you can do in the basement, and streaming games, and
that's why there's a green screen behind me.
Exactly. And there's a green screen behind this whole set, but I'm lazy. I don't feel like lighting my room better. But yeah, man. I mean, I have, we figured out ways of setting up, you know, a studio in our basement, and there's ways of doing this, that, and the other thing within this quarantine. But it's like, what's 5 years down the line?
Yeah.
Because there's a shitload of stuff we can knock out. There was when I was deployed, I prepped so much crap in my free time, a bunch of civilian production work when I was deployed. When I came back, it was just like knocked out this little short, knocked out this little web series, knocked out, failed at a couple of different podcasts, knocked out a couple of music videos, I started acting. I started acting in a bunch of crime shows, used my military background and my military police background as just basically acting school to play, you know, law enforcement and military roles and this, that, and the other. And it was just, you know, I made an outline of like the next 3 years after the deployment. And so now, again, this is almost like, you know, being cooped up in a bunker, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's outline the next 3 years and shoot, record, or at least write, and then, you know, kick it off when we can see each other. We can put, you know, gear on a set. We can all meet on location and start rolling. And what are we going to shoot? Because and which hell brings me to my next point. For you, what would you say your next agenda for, like, to say the next 2-3 months? Say we're still quarantined, your next agenda, your next set of goals of projects, personal, professional agendas.
Man, that's interesting because I haven't really thought much past like a week at this point, just because I'm trying. It's like I feel like I'm just starting to get through the muck of things I had queued up just because, you know, right before we all got in quarantine. So I'm at the point where, like, okay, now I can do the stuff that I want to do. I'm starting to get through the stuff that I have to do. So, and I'm also hearing things here in New York where productions who are on hiatus, like shows and whatnot, are like talking about getting back to shooting at the earliest middle of July.
Okay.
So we still have 2.5 more months of this. So that actually gave me kind of more of a time frame. It's like, okay, well, I got 2.5 more months to kind of get the things that I want to get done around the house or do stuff that I want to do done now. And then I can start to focus on work again before I get super slim. It's just like, okay, now I have a, you know, I can stop putting things off and get shit done, essentially, is what I was trying to say. But for things I'm trying to do for work and whatever, is like this week is like, you know, I'm doing what you're just saying. Like I'm planning out, I'm trying to do a little bit of writing. I've had 2 features I've been working on over the past 5 years that I'm like starting to get to the point now where, like, okay, once all the stuff that I have to get done is done, now I can sit down. The weather's starting to turn nice. I could sit out in my deck with a beer in hand, start to write, think, whatever. You know, I have TV shows that I've wanted to get a pitch to because I know producers who work for Amazon Studios who are looking for stuff because, you know, once the floodgates open, there's going to be so much content that people are going to want out the gate. And like, that's the other thing too, is like people will, you know, there's going to be a lot of demand for things. So like you said, like writing right now is a great time because like if we come out of this and people are like, okay, what's the next thing that we got going on? And like someone's like, well, you know, I have this idea, or you're like, hey, here's a full pitch. Here you go. Here's the pitch packet. Here's the Bible of the show, blah, 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 blah. Like if you take this time to be productive, like you can take that to the next level, and that could fuel your next 5 to 10 years down the road if that's what you want. You don't have to do that. But that's also like, if that's something you want to do and you're kind of like debating whether you should do it, just fucking do it. Like that's the best way. But I guess for me, I'm just doing, I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out work. Like I'm trying to send emails out to producers that I know and be like, hey, you know, I'm nothing on the books, let's go. Like, you know, I'm available for this. I'm working on my reel right now. I'm just trying to find time to work on my reel because I'm, you know, catching up with things I've said it a million times already. You know, just trying to get myself out there for self-promotion. But it's tough right now because literally everybody else is doing the same thing too. So it's you know, it's hard to do, but like that's why I'm trying to do things that are a little bit more attention grabbing, rechanging up my reel so it's more the same style of what I'm trying to go for, as opposed to a bunch of different little styles. I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the kind of work that I want to do. So let me feature all of these stills from films that I've shot and music videos. Let's put this up on my website because this is the cool, like, dramatic shit that I want to do. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing.
Hell yeah. Now, you raised a good point, because years ago I had a couple of people tell me, there's nothing to watch. You got to be kidding me. There's
So much
there's so much content on just the top three on Netflix, Hulu, and Prime. There is so much content, and yes and no. I think that these streaming services and these networks and whoever they may be will still want more new innovative stuff, because they were on hiatus for so long and they're kind of like postponed on this, that, and the other thing, and maybe they had to end. Maybe they have to. So like you were saying, Dick Wolf might just end FBI, because if it's done now, there's no point in picking it up later. So now that network's out of a show. So what's the next thing? What's the next thing? I mean, as far as the consumer goes, there's so much. We're never going to run out of content. For the past 5 years, I've only made like a 2% dent in my watch list on just Netflix. I'm just talking Netflix here. I've got Tubi also. I've got Hulu. I've got Prime. I've got so many different watch lists on so many different shows. And I'm only like 2% into my watch list just on Netflix.
Yeah, I don't know how people have all this time to they're like, oh, I've watched this, I've watched that. I'm like, where do you guys find time? Because I'm trying to find something I want to watch. Like, I want to watch The Last Kingdom. I've heard so many good things from that on Netflix. I literally just don't have the time. Like, I've been trying to. It's taken me 6 weeks to get through 8 episodes of Mad Men. But
yeah,
crazy.
Probably, but that's also because you are a producer yourself. You and I and a number of my other colleagues, we are producing our own things.
Yeah,
that's taking the time. You and the wife have a brand new house to be looking after. Me and the wife, we have a house and a kid to be doing this, that, and the other thing with. Yeah. There's days where I wake up and I realize I haven't showered in 3 days. What the fuck have I been doing? Well, every 3 hours on the dot is diaper change, bottle, kind of like hang out with him or playtime or tummy time, steam mind stimulus time, or if he's napping, maybe grab the laptop, do this. I have my blocks of time. The wife has her blocks of time for a walk or for alone time. And then the fucking day's over. And so we might have watched a couple of episodes of something, but still, it's just like our schedules. We did our best to maintain somewhat of a structured schedule, like before the quarantine, when we were both working, to not go insane and just be sucked into the TV. But we still do watch plenty of stuff. And I think I've knocked out a couple of series and watched a whole shitload of movies I never thought I was ever going to get around to watching that were on my watch list.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, we still want to maintain productivity now, because I guess it's just in our blood. It's in, it's
100% in our blood.
It's what
why we got into this industry.
Right. But it's also, now we're going to take advantage of this to throw a bunch of stuff out there to get something big picked up, and then to keep that ball rolling. Yeah, absolutely. If with that being said, when the floodgates open, what's your take on our upcoming new normal?
In terms of like production, or in terms of the world, or
you can say something about both. I mean, I'm thinking generally. It could be about just the world in general. It could be about production. Yeah.
I mean, considering that my life is like 90% production anyway, because that's all I spend all my hours in the day doing production work. It's I kind of see it. I know that producers are like definitely chomping at the bit to get back into it. So I'm sure they're trying to find ways of like how to, make standards and set precedents about what's going on and how to safely conduct business in the film industry. So like I would probably see things go back to how they were, but like maybe a lot of more. I'm really hoping we don't see apocalyptic video things come up together.
Obviously, yeah.
It's going to be like, oh, there's going to be one guy in a room. That's not going to be very interesting. but it's just, I meant like, for set work, I would see a lot of people with, kind of, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to talk and think at the same time. It's not a great strength of mine.
It's all right.
So I don't know. I would definitely see it like, probably taking times to do temperature checks and have safety meetings and make sure people aren't sick before they enter a set. That kind of stuff is like, I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday who said like, well, how are we going to do catering after this? Because like, you can't have like, the open meals that like they normally have, like buffet style, like that's gone. That's, not gonna be able to get people next to that. Unless it's all sanitized certain way and blah, blah, blah. So like, cause they were also talking about like, even once this is over, if they develop a vaccine or whatever, it's like there could be a second wave that's become immune to stuff. So there's got to be, I'm sure there's probably thinking about things going forward about, how do we make this the safest way to do, set work and whatnot, because as like it takes a village to make to make a movie or make a TV show. Cause like it's not just one person with a camera going around shooting stuff and doing stuff. Like you have a minimum. I think like the lowest crew I've ever had, even on a music video, I think was 10. So,
Yeah.
but like even for like films or short films, like you still need everyone. You still need actors. You still need background actors. You need assistant directors. You need cinematographers. You need focus pullers. You need second ACs for maintaining gear and equipment. You need loaders, people downloading stuff. You need grips, electrics, sound guys, art department, wardrobe, hair, makeup. There's so many. I'm definitely forgetting a whole bunch of people on the crew, like locations managers, like transportation, parking, so many things to think about. So it's a matter of like, and everyone is always in groups of people, like trying to get in a van, a 15-pass van, and take everyone to set. Well, that's not going to work anymore. So what do we do now? So I don't know. I don't know what the new normal is going to be outside of like, we're taking precautionary measures to make sure that everyone is safe. I mean, that's really all I can think of what'll happen. Like, here's a shit ton of hand sanitizer, some masks. Everyone signs a waiver to make sure, like, if that says they're not sick, and if they are sick, they're going to take the time off. Maybe they're going to implement more quality of life things in the future for like more paid time off or paid family leave or something like that for the film industry. I don't know. I don't know. It's just, I mean, whatever it is that they come up with, I'm going to be fully on board with, because I'm going to run out of funds in about 3 months. So, so I'm ready to get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, like I've said before on this show with other guests, you see a lot of these ads on Hulu, especially because Hulu, I think, is the one that has just too many ads. But a lot of these new ads is just, a lot of these celebrities self-submitting them. They might have memorized a script, a motivational part of this script for this PSA, for this commercial. So, and then they say it on their cell phone, and they self-submit to a Dropbox, and then all these videos go to an editor remotely, and he's splicing together this PSA or this commercial, the new Apple Creative commercial, and then there's another one, the CBS Sports, this really emotional, inspirational CBS Sports commercial, where it was just empty stadiums. So maybe one person goes out with a drone, shoots, a bunch of empty stadiums, gets permission. Obviously, who's going to stop a drone operator nowadays? There's nobody, there's no flights. So it's like that FAA regulations for drone operating, but shooting a bunch of empty stadiums. Then they used some stock footage of like all the last champions. And then they did some self-submit videos of families at home. And they probably, had another cinematographer go out with a small DSLR and shoot some empty basketball courts, empty parks, splice it together, made this really emotional thing. And it's like they found a way around it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But once the floodgates open, it's like, all right, well, artistically speaking, are we still going to be doing mobile commercials now? Mobile,
I definitely think so. I definitely think that's going to be the case. I just think they're just going to be probably I just think there's going to be new standards, and there's going to be more seriousness taken to safety and health concerns, really. Because like, all industries, the film industry can kind of sort of take a bad, it can kind of be a little lackadaisical in terms of safety and health concerns. So, but I really think that going forward, like, if somebody says, the main thing about us, for freelancers is like, the whole reason of like, people come to work sick because like they don't, if they take a day off, they don't get paid.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like, I think there's definitely going to be some changes in regard to that of just like, people are sick. So like, how do they fix that? How do they budget for that? How do they plan for that kind of thing? To make sure that everyone else doesn't get sick and their show doesn't shut down.
Yeah. So I mean, right off the top of my head, I'm thinking, okay, industry goes back to 12-hour days, but 2 hours of that is in the beginning. You have to double your medic department, and then you got the temperature thing on the forehead, and it's going to be 2 hours of just checking the temperature, check a temperature, check a temperature, check a temperature. Everybody's just in line, getting military styled into the next compartment, and then that's when you fucking sign in as crew or cast or whatever. And then I mean, I'm looking at, because I know industry went down to 10, maybe the industry has to go back up to 12 with a 2-hour check-in period, and the medic department is doubled,
or tripled.
Yeah, shit. I mean, it's all about the budget. So I mean, I was discussing with some colleagues of mine. We do, if you're familiar with those, cheap crime shows on ID, we came up with one that takes place in the DC universe, but it's completely produced in the style of those really low budget true crime reenactment shows. One's in the DC universe, one's in the Marvel universe, and I figured, shit, I could pull off this whole show with myself. I already wrote, a bunch of the scripts, writer, producer, director. I needed about 3 actors in front of a green screen as the crime professionals, the psychologists or the reporters that are familiar with the cases, and they sit in front of a green screen talking. And then you have a cinematographer and a lighting guy and a sound guy. So I could probably, I'm pretty sure the cinematographer can do a simple three camera light a green screen and a subject in front of the green screen. So just a cinematographer, sound guy, me, and then voiceover actors can all do it remotely.
Yeah. Have you seen are you familiar with Cinematography Database at all? Matt Workman? Yeah, Cinematography DB on I think is the website. So a friend of mine, or I wouldn't say a friend, like we're just colleagues and associates.
Sure.
So anyway, this guy, Matt Workman, has made a completely remote virtual green screen production studio. Like he's running 2 HTC Vives controllers on a shoulder mount, like a small rig shoulder mount with a monitor hooked into his computer. He's running it all through Unreal Engine, and he can go in there handheld and looking and seeing people come out, and is making completely virtual productions, whatnot. So that's something I think will be happening in the future too. I'll send you a link to it. It's wild, dude. He's like, oh yeah, he just has like his whole room. He's got like a 20 by 20 room set up with all green screen, and it's just him. He's just in there doing this stuff. He's handheld. He's doing dolly moves. He's like getting all this stuff, all this action stuff, and he just pre-programs it all in Unreal Engine, and he has the scene play out, and he's in there as the camera, like as they would do for cutscenes for video games, but like they can re-render it out with higher quality. So it's wild, man.
Matt Workman, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll definitely send me some links, and I'll put those in the description as well, so the what few viewers I have, they can check it out. But yeah, so my biggest moneymaker in the last couple of years has been live streaming events. So conferences at hotels, sporting events, concerts, but it's mostly like these big conferences in New Orleans, like, all these celebrities get together and talk about mental health or whatever the hell it is. And so it was maybe 2-3 camera setup, live streaming, and my biggest thing was live streaming. And for the last 3 years, we were always talking about, this is going to go away. It's all going to be VR. Classes are going to be VR. These conferences are going to be VR because, for example, the Aesthetic Society, right? So they're a bunch of plastic surgeons, but it's a society. And they get credit. So there's thousands of people that go to the website and watch the live streaming, and then they can watch it and then they can watch it on demand, you know, a couple weeks later, and they can rewatch this thing, right? And they get credit for watching it live. And so at some point, they're going to put on, what was it, Google Glass?
Something
Google,
like that, yeah.
Google
Oculuses,
goggles.
yeah.
Yeah. And this whole thing is, and so all my gigs got canceled until one of the rosters found a workaround to take Zoom, put it back into the streaming software, and then stream the Zoom out. And so when you can do a screen share on Zoom, that's on that I can cut from a full screen of you to your screen share, or I can do a third cut to the like the 7 people panel, the 20 people panel, whatever. And but for years we were talking about VR. And so I think in the next year or two, this VR thing is going to jump in. Matt Workman's thing is going to then be plugged into the VR.
Yeah.
And you know, it's all going to be VR. And we were always talking about it, and everybody was like, man, nothing compares to actually being at the hotel. And yeah, but dude, the coronavirus is out there now.
Yeah.
And now we have this whole new, I'm old enough to remember the AIDS epidemic in the late 80s, early 90s. People were losing their fucking minds then, but they still weren't quarantining because that was very specifically sexually transmitted. This is freaking like shake someone's hand or get within a foot and you got the fucking coronavirus. So
yeah,
it's
wild.
like there's conferences. I hope conferences, concerts, sporting events are still going to be a thing, but a lot of this is going to be jumping into VR, like classes.
Yeah, I could see that absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
I know that Teradek is putting together. So since you do a lot of streaming stuff, I'll send you a link for it. I know on the first, Teradek is putting together a virtual production on how to do live streaming remotely. So you should definitely check that out too.
Okay.
So because that's something that we're gonna, that's one of the things I'm talking with today in a couple hours about. What, you know, how do we in the, you know, as DITs, like how do we use this to our advantage to be, you know, make ourselves essential in terms of like networking knowledge on set with streaming and getting clients access remotely, you know, that kind of stuff. It's like, and then also dealing, like you're saying, you know, people are shooting stuff and uploading to Dropbox and it puts together, like we could still do that on set, but like still have everything look good and not just like someone Joe Schmo with a, you know, an iPhone that looks like shit, you know, uploads it, like making it look cinematic and all that stuff. So it's weird. It's definitely being talked about. It's just a matter of like, you know, figuring it out and doing it. Probably going to take a couple jobs of like fucking it up before we realize like, oh, this is actually what we should be doing.
And you hit another nail right on the head, fucking it up. I mean, everything is about fail until you find that perfect formula. And that's how vaccines are figured out. That's how, you know, a lot of independent filmmakers have just fucking failed after failed after failed. Tarantino hated Natural Born Killers, hated the way it came out, but he loved the way I don't know if he loved it, but he liked the way True Romance came out. And then he decided, fuck it, I'm directing one of them. And long story short, him and Tony Scott kind of flipped a coin on who was going to direct which one, True Romance or Reservoir Dogs. And so he ended up directing Reservoir Dogs, and it was fail and then sort of like success and then hit the nail on the head and then Pulp Fiction and then success. And there was a little bit of fails here and then got better and got better. And that's what everything is. And people are afraid, you know, to pull that trigger. Yeah. And dude, I've been doing this for as long as you have. You hit the nail on the head with something. I've been fucking like fail and then a success. And then I found like, you know, something I'm fucking phenomenal at, but it's not my end all be all, but like live streaming and figured out acting and figured out, you know, some editing and maybe some cool web series. I've fucking failed at a bunch of podcasts. Clearly nobody, I'm nowhere near a game streamer. I tried to do the game streaming thing, didn't work. And it's like, I'm just going to do my own thing and even fail at that. And then eventually find a fucking success at something. And as long as, but yeah, man, like with this whole VR live streaming and finding a new normal, it's just like, okay, well, let's start experimenting now. And like we were saying earlier, now is the time to experiment.
Yeah, find out what works and what you you know, maybe you have a hobby that you think that you could do well at. Maybe you really like pottery. Who knows? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with that, what would be one point of advice, or one bit of advice to put out there for our viewers?
I have so many different points of advice I could give. I have a good one that I could figure. You know, I'll give you a financial advice. How's that? Does that work?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's something that's so for those who know or don't know, I went bankrupt 3 times living in New York. Didn't know what to do. I ran out of money, was broke as shit. Now I would say moderately successful and whatnot. And so there's just this one little tip that someone told you. No, the best thing I could tell people is for that is be prepared for something like this to happen. And it's actually multiple tips, but I'll just call it one. Is always have a 6-month savings plan. Like if you can, like, you know, an emergency fund of 6 months. It's you may not be able to get to it for a few years, but like once you get to that point where you have 6 months of an emergency fund, that way you can weather out something like this. Or like, you know, you are on a TV show that gets canceled like mid-season, like now you like don't have to worry about it, because now you can survive until you get the next job, and then you can slowly build your 6-month saving plan up. And the best way I was able to attain a 6-month saving plan for a long time is take 10% of the money or take 10, when you get your paycheck for whatever it is, take 10% that you own and put it into a savings account. Don't touch it all year. Don't, like, January 1st to December 29th or 31st, whatever. Don't touch it. It serves 2 purposes. One is you can actually see how much money you've made all year. So you can take a look at that bank account at any time. You say you got $500 in the bank account, you've made $5,000 so far this year, or whatever it is. You got you got $2,000 in there, you made $20,000. So and so that, you know, money you've taken home. And also you can then at the end of the year, if you need that for taxes, if you want to put that into your savings, your 6-month savings plan or whatever, you want to go on vacation, you want to buy a camera, you want to buy something else, you now have a little bit of savings to do. And that's what I did to help buy my some cameras, some lighting equipment, some lenses, DIT stuff, monitors. Like I didn't take loans out. I just saved money that I was being paid, because like I was able to have the discipline. It's like, okay, 10%, I'm just going to put it in here. I'm not going to touch it for a year. I mean, I there were definitely times where like I should have touched it because I went bankrupt and couldn't do it. But like I still was like, you know what, I'm going to stick to my plan. Not going to touch it. And then when I needed it later on, like the next year, it's like, okay, now I have, you know, $3,000 that I can spend on, like, you know, a lens that I was trying to buy or something like that. Anyway, so is something that I've been doing for the past 10 years at this point, and it's how I was able to buy a house, 2 houses, camera equipment, all this stuff. It's just saving up that 10% every single time, and this, like, okay, now I know how much of money I've made throughout the whole year, and also now I have a safety net if something like this was to happen. So that's the best advice I can give somebody.
Absolutely.
Especially if they're starting out and they don't really know what they want to do, you know. So that's the best way to do it, because you're gonna, especially if you're starting out, you're not gonna make a ton of money, and you're gonna weather through a lot of storms. So it's gonna be really difficult until you get onto something big. And also, like, you know, because I know a lot of people in the film industry who, you know, the film industry can be very lucrative in terms of in money. And like, there's a lot of people who like, oh, wow, like I'm making, you know, $3,000 a week. Like, this is awesome. And then you go out and you live like you make $3,000 a week, but you don't realize that, like, that's not forever.
Right.
Like you might make that for 6 months out of the year, and then that show's done. And now you're like, oh, now I have this lifestyle of making X amount of money per week. Now I don't have any money. Now I have to go into my savings, and now I'm burning through. It's like, no, you just gotta not live frugal, but like don't go crazy with you know, just have expectations of yourself and like where you plan to be. And like, just because you happen to make a good amount of money in a short amount of time or something like that, like don't go buck wild, you know?
Right. Because let's see, $3,000 a week, 3,000 a week times 4, but times 6. I mean, that's 72,000 a year. But the later 6 months of that year, you're not getting a check at all. So you have to budget. So I usually budget way under. So I would take 72,000 and I would look at it like I'm making 60,000 a year, and I would budget everything out at 60,000 a year. Especially because me being full-time freelance in the DMV area, it always seems to me that all of August is a dead season.
Mm-hmm.
And then from like November 15th to January 15th is a dead season. So there's 3 months. I'm not getting a fuck all, except for if there's that one freaking film or commercial, but usually with the live streaming, with the AV work, with the corporate industrial stuff,
mm-hmm.
and most TV film, you know, then everybody wants to take that 1 month. All the rich producers want to take that 1 month vacation in August, or they're staying home with the family from Thanksgiving to after New Year's. And so we, as the crew or the smaller actors, need to take that into consideration. And the wife is a third grade teacher, so she ain't working. She's not physically getting a paycheck late June to early September. So because summers are off.
Yeah.
So you could do the math, and she makes a great annual salary, but she's not getting a physical check. So you're getting, oh shit, man, I'm making $5,000 a month. I'm gonna live off $5,000 a month. But then when July comes, you ain't getting that $5,000.
Yeah.
And you have to you have to round down, you have to budget down and spread it out.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the industry don't see that. They see that as like, you know, they just see their weekly paycheck. They're like, oh wow, I can buy this car, I can buy this house.
Yep.
And, you know, like we had that conversation for when we were buying this house. Like we could have bought a house that was way more expensive, but I was like, well, like that's going to completely extinguish all of our emergency savings fund.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but we don't have a lot of things. Plus, our taxes are going to be outrageous because it's a bigger house. Like, why don't we just like, you know, come down a little bit and like be something a little bit more comfortable, something we, you know, if we have kids in the next year or two, like, you know, one of us is going to be, you know, staying home more than the other, most likely my wife. But it's just, you know, at least for 6 months or so. So it's like until she can get back up to work. So it's like we're going to have a reduction in income for a long time. It's like, don't live beyond your means. I guess that's the best advice I can have, especially in this industry. Just be prepared for the worst. So because it will happen. It's currently happening now.
Yeah, so. For the longest time, I would have hand-me-down this and hand-me-down that. And I remember for years after HD TVs came out, my first one somebody gave me, I still had a freaking RCA composite, coaxial freaking TV. And I think my first HD TV that I bought was actually an iMac, and I would have, you know, I would play movies on that, or I would stream movies on that. I didn't have an HD TV or cable. And then as these prices went drastically down, now I've got, you know, smart Visios upstairs that me and the wife go halvesies on at $100 to $150 a pop a TV.
Yeah.
You know, now, and with built-in apps inside. But before they were like, what, $1,000 for these big HD TVs?
Like that, yeah.
I didn't need that. I didn't need that because basically at that point, what I was watching was probably on my iMac, or I was editing our own shit on the iMac. I was making my own stuff, or I'd be watching something on, you know, basic broadcast TV on a 4x3 TV, I think in like the late 2000s. I didn't bother. What was the point? So, yeah, I mean, it's also an idea in your mind of like not spoiling yourself, of depriving yourself. Because now in my 40s, I've got a bunch of HD TVs mounted on the wall, and I feel spoiled as shit. I'm like, man, I got a smart house. If you were to come into my house, it's not a smart house at all. But to me, it feels like I got a smart house where I say, hey, Alexa, play Netflix, and the TV fucking does it. And everyone's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I had that for years, but I've got so much money saved up.
Yeah.
I didn't buy it when it was like the first thing. I'm actually buying old ass tech. But to me, I feel like I'm in, Minority Report with a smart house, and I walk in and, it's like little things like that you deprive yourself. You kind of, and when when the new tech becomes old tech and you finally get that, it feels like new tech to you. And actually, and you feel like you're spoiling yourself, but for only 10% of the price. And you're still saving on this. Yeah, man. Oh, yeah. Great points. If you you got any plugs, any links, any socials you wanna put out there?
Sure. If you want, can I plug my gaming
Absolutely.
podcast?
Everything.
Sure. Awesome. Well, so I have a gaming podcast called the Overachievers Gaming Podcast. The Instagram is og.podcast. I think the Twitter is overachieversp. The website is bnoverachiever.com. I'm also on Instagram at Vash. It's VVASH. That's been my handle for 20 years at this point. And I also have a DIT blog that I've neglected for forever at this point that I'm going to be getting back into, which is dorkinattent.com. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Charlie Anderson. Me and him would go way back. A lot of productions, a lot of independent productions, some ups, some downs, a lot of fails, a lot of successes. But thanks again for joining me, Charlie. And to my viewers out there, like, subscribe, share, comment, thumbs up, thumbs down if you don't like it. Unfortunately, I don't care.
Only thumbs up.
Only thumbs up. Like, subscribe, share, ring the bell for notifications, and check us out next time.